Okay, let's try this. Now, I just want to say a few words about the census and the census advertisement, which has been shown on TV recently, and it will be continuing up until the night of the census itself, I'd say, which is April the 3rd, in a few weeks' time. Um, so the last census was in 2016, and it was meant to be one last year. It's held every 5 years, but because of the whole CV situation, it was postponed by a year. So just a few statistics before we begin. Now, Ireland, based on the last census, is about 20% non-Irish. Now, if you look at the official stats from the CSO from the last census, they will tell you it's something like 12.3%, 12.7%, that kind of region. But they are talking about people, they are only including people who don't have an Irish passport. But in the meantime, of course, you have many people who've gotten Irish passports who are not Irish. And that's the difference between this 12.3, 12.7% and the 20%. So in actuality, there's about 20% of the country that are not Irish. But there's a discrepancy there between the number of people who gotten Irish passports in the meantime. So that's why you've got this difference between the 12.5% and the 20%. But in reality, it's about 20% non-Irish in the country. So let's continue.
On the night of April 3rd, we'll all come together to fill out our census forms. The census isn't just about numbers on a page. It counts for much more than that. Because the information you provide helps show where homes, schools, hospitals and public transport are needed.
Okay, let's just talk a little bit about what we've seen there. In the first half of the ads, we've already had several people, either mixed race or, of non-Irish extraction anyway. We've had a few traveller families, we've had a few Down syndrome kids, and then we had this Sikh man with a white horse, which I would say is a typically Irish-looking horse, so it's that juxtaposition of someone who's clearly not from Ireland originally, with a symbol which I would say is a very Irish kind of symbol. The white horse is something that you would see down the country a lot, and the wild Irish horses, that's deliberate. That's kind of, and also, the introduction, of course, of several people who are not originally from Ireland. There's an attempt here to normalise the abnormal, okay? Or at least to normalise an Ireland which has not come about organically, The fact that Ireland is 20% non-Irish now, at a minimum, probably be more than that when we have our census now next month. But that situation has not been created organically, and that's the part that's really, that really sticks in your throat, because if Ireland had been allowed to develop organically, of course it wouldn't be 20% non-Irish, But what's happened in the meantime is we've had the Maastricht Treaty, we've had the Nice Treaty, we've had the Lisbon Treaty, we've had the loosening up of labour laws, we've had the enlargement of the EU, we've had the abuse of our citizenship, birthright citizenship laws, we've had the abuse of our asylum laws, which is going on an ongoing basis. And all of these factors together have made Ireland into a place which is increasingly less and less Irish. And, the important point to realise from what I've just said as well is that this has not come about through a natural process. It's come about through a process of social engineering, really. And, the increase in Ireland's population as well, that's also a factor here. Like, the people who run this country, they want an ever-growing population because they want more consumers. They want more people paying into the tax net, if you like. They want more revenue for government. They want rents to go up. They want house prices to go up. They want competition for jobs, which puts a certain pressure on wages, helps to drive down wages to an extent. All of these factors benefit the top couple of percent in Ireland, but they're generally not good for the average punter. And this is what's been going on over the last number of years. And this is why it's important to realise that the messaging in this ad, it's a little bit insidious, because it's celebrating this social engineering. It's celebrating this kind of manufacturing of an Ireland that we know would never have come about organically. And it's not that anyone has an issue with foreign people. Like, we all work with, or at least a lot of us work with foreign people. Quite a few of us are married to people from other countries, this kind of thing. In our daily lives, we interact with people from different countries, and that's fine. It's never been an issue. It's when it's brought about by an artificial, abnormal, manufactured way. This is what's disturbing. This is what's concerning. And this is what this ad seems to be celebrating. And this is what I think we need to be aware of, like, and the fact that we're not even allowed to speak about it, it makes it even more of a concern, thanks to groups like ENAR, the European Network Against Racism, which is there precisely to prevent ordinary people speaking about immigration. That is why they are there, okay? They basically put a muzzle over the mouths of all the political parties to prevent them even bringing up the topic of immigration. You're not even allowed to discuss it, okay? And that is why essentially this topic has gone unchallenged for the last 10 or 15 years, because politicians are not allowed to speak about it, essentially, and therefore ordinary people don't get to voice their opinions on it. Or if they do, they're shut down by these so-called anti-racism groups. And this is what has created this modern Ireland, which is 20% at a minimum non-Irish, and looks to be going to continue ever more in that direction, because we are not allowed to discuss topics like immigration. And in a natural, fair, modern Ireland, of course you would be allowed to discuss all issues, including immigration, but we're not allowed to do. And this is why we have an Ireland that is increasingly less and less Irish. And unfortunately, the likes of the Central Statistics Office seem to think that's a great thing and seem to want to celebrate it. So let's continue anyway.
In every part of Ireland, telling us what kind of country we are now and what kind of country we need to be.
And again, like they seem to be trying to tell us, okay, this is your fate, Paddy. You don't get a choice, okay? The very fact that they're putting in this messaging, what kind of country we are now and what kind of country we need to be. And as they're saying those words, they're showing us a black lady. So it's like they're telling us, Ireland, Paddy, you need to be multicultural, okay? You don't matter until you're a multicultural country. You're not sophisticated, okay? You can't take your place amongst the nations of this world until you are fully multicultural. That seems to be the message they're giving here. And for me, that's a very disturbing one, It's no issue with the black lady here. We have people here from Africa and from Asia and other parts of the world, and that's never been an issue if it were to happen organically. But it's not being allowed to happen organically. It's come about through the various abuse of our citizenship laws and asylum laws and so on, and radical loosening up of our labour laws and so forth, and these various treaties like Nice and Maastricht and Lisbon and so on. So none of this has come about through a normal, natural process. And this is the thing that we really need to point out when we're talking to people we know about this. Ireland should be allowed to develop in a natural, organic way, but it's not been allowed to do that in recent decades. And that's something we should all be aware of and we should all be able to speak about.
So on Sunday, April 3rd, let's be a voice for ourselves, our families and our communities. Let's come together and be counted.
Okay, sorry, let's stop that for a moment. Now, a couple of other points I want to make here as well is that just imagine you were in the home country, we'll say, or the place where that lady originates from, that black lady in the ad there. Okay, she's clearly originally from Africa, okay, her parents are African. Now, if you were to go to the home country of where she originated from, whether that be Nigeria, Congo, Zimbabwe, some other country in sub-Saharan Africa, and let's say you were to have a census ad over there, and in that ad you were to have loads of European people, loads of people of non-sub-Saharan African extraction, okay, loads of white faces, maybe have a few Asian faces in there, have some Jewish people as well, and so forth. Have loads of people in that ad who are clearly not originally from sub-Saharan Africa. How do you think the people of Nigeria or Congo or Zimbabwe or Zambia, how do you think they would react? How, you know what I mean? Like, this is the thing we need to keep in mind. Once you leave Western Europe or the other kind of countries that are, say, of an Anglo-Germanic tradition, like, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and so forth. Once you leave those sort of countries, there is no way you would see such an ad. You would never see such an ad which is celebrating the dilution of the native population. That simply would not happen. To have such an ad which really is sending forth such a, I would say, a kind of almost a poisonous message. Like, why would you want to celebrate the dilution of your native population? How is this a good thing? For any person who's thinking rationally and normally, of course it's not a good thing, but the Central Statistics Office seem to want to celebrate this fact. And you can see what's going on here. There's a certain kind of insecurity. There's a kind of insecurity that Ireland can not be a modern, sophisticated country until it becomes fully multicultural. And that seems to be the mentality at play, that we are not enough. As Irish people, we are not enough until we become, 30, 40, 50% multicultural, 50% non-Irish. And until that point, we're just some muck savages here on the edge of Europe who haven't got a clue, who are just pig ignorant, tick ignorant, That's the mentality. Think of how patronising that is. Think of how insulting that is for the ordinary Irish person. That would simply never happen in a sub-Saharan African country. They would never celebrate the dilution of their ethnic native population. It would never happen in China. It would never happen in India. It would never happen in Argentina or Mexico or Chile or any of these countries, outside of the Anglosphere, for want of a better word. Okay? So that's something to keep in mind, What we're witnessing here is a completely unnatural, abnormal, kind of mentality. The celebrating of the fact that your country is becoming less and less Irish. There's something a little bit sick about that, I would say, That's not to say that the people in the CSO are sick-minded themselves, but rather they're caught up in this institutional, globalist way of thinking, whereby any kind of awareness of one's own kind of ethnic native background is something to be denigrated, is something to be ashamed of. I mean, of course it's not. Once you leave the countries of Western Europe and go into any other country of non-Anglo, non-Germanic kind of origin, the people in those countries are not ashamed of where they come from. They would never celebrate their country becoming less and less Indian or less Indonesian or less Chinese or less Brazilian or less Nigerian or so on. And yet Ireland and countries like us do exactly that. So, it's important to just make this point. If you are speaking to people around you, other Irish normal people around you, or don't even have to be Irish, just other people living in Ireland. And, if the topic of this ad comes up, it's no harm to point out these simple points that I've just made here. You can be proud of where you come from. You can care about where you come from. You can care about your roots, your history, your culture, your heritage, your language, all of these things. It doesn't mean you hate people from other places. Of course not. I mean, that's a really, narrow-minded, stupid way of looking at things. But that seems to be the mentality that as Irish people, we have to overcompensate. We have to denigrate and look down on our own culture and where we come from, rather than taking pride in where we come from, but also respecting people from other cultures. This is the normal way of things. And yet somehow it's not possible for our establishment here to do that. It's not possible for our politicians, for our media, for our economists to a large extent, for our people in popular culture, like our musicians and artists and journalists and so forth. These kind of people seem to look down on Ireland and look down on where we came from. There's no need to do that, And anyone who has I would say, a healthy mental state would never think like that. So, don't be ashamed of where you come from. Like, don't go along with this celebrating of the dilution of Irish culture and the dilution of the Irish population. Of course, this is not a good thing. Let's respect people from other countries, of course. But while doing so, let's not denigrate and be ashamed of our own culture. Okay? There's only one place called Ireland. And, once that place is gone, it's gone forever.